Welcome, everyone, to the Regeneration Collective podcast, the next UN Visions for a Regenerative Future. I'm Silke von Brockhausen, a UN insider with 18 years across more than a dozen UN missions and founder of the Regeneration Collective. As the UN approaches its 80th year and the campaign for the next Secretary General gets underway, amidst protracted conflicts, widening inequalities, and crossed planetary boundaries, we ask, how can the UN become the platform through which people, institutions, and the more than human world repair and transform broken systems and create conditions where life can thrive? In each episode, we speak with regenerative practitioners, policy shapers, indigenous knowledge holders, peace builders, culture makers, and frontline humanitarians about the lived experience and visions that could translate into regenerative UN policies, organizational culture, and operations. This is for UN staff, partners, member states, and bridge builders who are curious about what regeneration means in practice and who are ready to turn the UN into a trailblazer for this shift. And today, I'm very honored to welcome Elyes Mkacher to the next UN podcast. Elyes is a regenerative farmer, a holistic thinker, permaculture designer, and educator who has become a leading voice for planetary regeneration. He's the founder of Da Emima, a thriving permaculture education center in Cheba, Tunisia, where an abandoned family home was transformed into a living laboratory of ecological resilience and community learning. Elyes has spent more than a decade cultivating regenerative practices at the local, national, and global levels, drawing inspiration from right livelihood, bioregioning, and commoning. He's also the author of Decolonize Imagination for Planetary Regeneration, a guide, which challenges us to dismantle the colonial mindset and rewild our ways of thinking, organizing, and relating. Elyes also offers an online permaculture design course at the Design School for Regenerating Earth and has recently taken on a new role as community soil tender at the school, working alongside global leaders to weave bioregional action into a planetary network of hope and transformation. With his hands deep in the soil and his vision rooted in systemic change, Elyes invites us to imagine not only fertile gardens, but also regenerative organizations, societies, and futures. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome you, Elyes, to this podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Silke, for inviting me, and congratulations for this wonderful podcast. I mean, I really like the questions you are putting on the table, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you, Elyes. So generous to spend your time with us and be willing to reply to all my burning questions I have for you. But let's start with one question I ask all of my guests. Can you explain regeneration to us in a simple and practical way?
Yeah. So regeneration for me, when I started learning about regeneration, what attracted me is that it's like the opposite of degeneration or degradation. So I was born in a time of degeneration and extraction of the planet Earth. Yeah, and I dream of regenerating the planet and regenerating our ecosystems. So regeneration for me is moving from a spiral of death and moving to a spiral of life and a virtuous spiral of life instead of toxic spiral of death. That would be my definition, maybe.
That sounds beautiful. And I think what we all want to strive for. In your view, why is this striving for life especially relevant at this historical moment of overlapping crisis and planetary boundary overshoot?
I think it's extremely relevant because right now I believe we are facing collapse of ecological collapse, economic collapse, and social collapse that is happening due to accumulation of crisis and a culture of extraction and separation. So this ultimately leads us to a collapse. And regeneration heal our relationship with the earth and teach us how to live in harmony with the earth and how to be a keystone species again, I would say, to heal the earth.
You know, when I talk with people about regeneration, they often just assume this is about environmentalism or protecting nature or about sustainable agriculture. I think also what you've been saying now, it is so much more. It really means have to see ourselves again as part of nature. We have to heal this image of being separated from it. We have to overstep it. But also, it is so much more than just looking at it from this agriculture perspective. And you're a farmer, actually. So, how do you respond to people who have this misconception that it's just about soil health or planting and growing? What do you say to this?
Yeah, what I would say is that regeneration is a design science for life. So it's based on science and design to increase life on Earth and well-being. And what I do in the farm, for me, the farm and the garden is like a classroom. And the same principles we use to create a resilient food forest, we could use the same principles to build a resilient society, resilient economy, and resilient even inner lives. So yeah, it's all about the resilience to collapse and building, helping life to thrive on our planet.
Can you give us a specific example from the resilient garden, food forest to a resilient organization and resilient person? Something that comes up thinking about looking at the garden as the metaphor or the mirror for us.
Yeah, for example, the garden, like the food forest, in a food forest, we need diversity. Diversity is key for resilience. In a culture where you have, in a monoculture system, is very fragile and non-resilient. So I try to apply this principle at all levels and all scales, like to value diversity, for example. And there are many other examples. And practice listening and deep observation to bring solutions that are adapted to the local context and that go with the flow of nature and work with nature, not against it.
I love this. I think you just described regenerative leadership in a nutshell. And what I really wish for all the teams that I am working with, that they embrace these metaphors that you've mentioned of listening, observing, but also I think this diversity you mentioned, it's so key. And I know that it's one of the core values across the UN system to hire diversity in our workforce, to come up with diverse solutions where we work. For me, that's where the work also starts, that each of us needs to understand what it means to embrace diversity yourself as a person and then live it in your daily life, in your work, and transmit it also to the programs you're working in. But I think one question that is always on my mind is that notion of colonialism still happening across the work we do at the UN, the way we are interacting with each other. It is still imbued by the notion of colonialism, imperialism, exploitation, separation between us and nature, and this kind of mindset. And you've actually written a guide about decolonizing imagination for planetary regeneration. Can you maybe tell us what are the kind of things we need to unlearn if we really want to embody regeneration?
Even while writing this book, I feel that I'm also in the beginning of this journey of decolonizing my imagination, as I believe it's everyone today. is colonized in some way by the dominant culture. And this dominant culture has spread many myths that we need to unlearn. One of them is our separation, like that humans are separated from nature, and that we live on the earth, not in the earth and with the earth. This is a fundamental, I think, belief that can shape many decisions and organizations. And another myth is scarcity. So scarcity, I believe, is artificial. In nature functions through abundance. Like you just look at a tree, you try to count the leaves on a tree, and that's how nature functions. Like it functions through abundance. Like you look at the sea, you look at the mountains, how big they are. And another myth is linearity. So straight lines are very rare in nature. Life, doesn't progress in a predictable line, but actually moves in cycles and spirals and waves. And nature is extremely complex too, while the human thinking and system now is extremely reductionist, not honoring the complexity of life. That's very problematic. So these are general myths that I can name.
Incredible. It helps myself to become more aware of where I still follow these patterns or where they're still very prominent in my life. But I'm looking at regeneration a lot from this organizational perspective, or what can I, as a manager in a place like the United Nations, do to change this mindset? Do you have some concrete recommendations how a manager could change that in their own environment, or especially also change it within themselves first before they even try to implement that around them?
Yeah, so I think for the managers in the UN and for everyone who, because I believe the UN is full of good intentions, and for everyone who really want to build a permanent peace and build social justice around the world, we need to review maybe the metrics we use that might be reductionist, and look at maybe other metrics like I don't know, like the health of ecosystems, the drinkable rivers, the pure air and healthy soils, and well-being of communities. I think these need to be the metrics for our work instead of GDP and money and reports, and also practice listening. Like instead of writing solutions on offices and desks and then exporting them to communities. I think in the UN we need to, people need to go on the ground, meet the communities and listen, practice deep listening, and then act as capital stewards to support the work that these communities are already doing, instead of exporting solutions from the top down. So that would be my thoughts on this question.
Thank you so much. And I personally am so passionate about exactly this feedback loop between the UN and the population we serve. And I know that there is a lot of my colleagues who feel very passionate about what we call localization agenda, and build it much more into the way we're being, and not just have it as an afterthought or check the box exercise, but make it part of the DNA, that we don't engage anywhere until you have a really good idea of what's really happening based on different ways of measuring that you mentioned, and then actually getting the feedback and the wisdom of the people who actually know the place where we engage. And what you're also saying about the metrics, it reminds me of this World Happiness Index instead of the World Development Index, and or the Human Development Index that we have. And also the well-being economy, donut economy principles is something that I feel need to become much more prominent in the conversations we are having in the UN. So thank you for mentioning that as well. That's absolutely what I believe in too. I would like to learn more about the design school for regenerating Earth, actually. And you are offering courses there, but you're also recently taking over the task of tending to community soil in this school. Can you tell us more about the school and your work there?
The Design School for Regenerating Earth is a global community of practice. It has now more than 800 members from different parts of the world, 800 earth regenerators, I would say, because that's what bring all these people together is the vision to collectively regenerate the earth and also, yeah, collectively make sense making of how to regenerate the earth, how to do it. So we are learning this together. And I was called to this role of community soil tender. And the way I look at it is that the design school will be like another garden alongside the gardens that I'm stewarding here on the ground, the food forest. And I look at this community as a living food forest, a human food forest made of different layers, like from canopy trees, under layer trees, shrubs, and ground covers, and fungi. Different layers where every layer is important and every layer is celebrated to form a whole. And my role, and under that, this food forest, there is the soil that allow this ecosystem to thrive. And the soil is actually our shared trust and shared infrastructure and shared knowledge that we are building together. So my role would be to steward that space and make sure, the whole community is thriving on a fertile soil for everyone in the school. So it's an experiment that we are starting. I mean, the design school was founded, I think, more than 2 years ago by Joe Brewer and Penny Heppel. So it grew in a very healthy and nice way that I really appreciate. So this new experiment of tending the community as a food forest community will start on this October with the start of a new season in the design school. And I'm very excited, and I would invite you and everyone to join this experiment and this community that is learning how to regenerate the earth and also collaborating and building relationships across the bioregions and across the planet Earth.
It sounds so interesting. And it's a little bit of what we are going through in the little collective that I've started, which is only a WhatsApp group. But it's kind of mirroring the bigger institutions that we need to regenerate and the whole planet. What is missing to build a healthy community, and then add these components and try to let things grow while also providing some sort of container where people feel they can be brave and show their potential. And I feel it's a bit magic how we can already learn all of this and then apply it in our own families and our communities, but also in the workplace. And what you have described, the plans you have for the school, I have that vision for the UN as a whole organization as well, that we are embracing our staff as soil, which comes with all these beautiful intentions and this compassion and passion for change. And then it doesn't get all the nutrients it needs, like care, well-being, and space to grow and to take risks and be held by a group where you can be honest, show your emotions. I envision a UN where that flourishes. And I can sense it in the teams I've been leading, that if you provide as much as you can from your own abilities, you see so much potential in what we can achieve as the UN. And we have this platform worldwide to go out and then bring this into the communities and member states we work with and governments. So can you give us some practical tips how you can actually nurture this soil in an institution, in a group. How can you start building this trust in a group of people you don't know that well, or maybe only online?
Maybe the main tip would be to practice listening and deep listening, and practice also storytelling, like telling stories of regeneration, and telling stories maybe that we don't find in the mainstream, and listen to that. Also practice speaking for the more than a human world, speaking for the earth, speaking for the animals, for the ecosystems, and practice reciprocity. I think reciprocity is extremely important instead of extraction. That's how nature works. Like nature for me is a tapestry of reciprocity, where you give and then you get back, and then you give, and then and to build this virtuous spiral of life. And also practice symbiotic relationships instead of separation. So people grow together and build guilds, and then build super guilds, like the food forest, that is resilient to whatever change can happen, and can last in time, and especially in the context today of uncertainty and collapse.
These are beautiful ideas and advice, and I thank you so much for sharing them from your lived experience and wisdom of working with nature. And it's incredible how how many solutions are already out there that nature just provides to us, and we often look in completely different places for these solutions, but they're right there. And we just need to learn to listen better. And I love that you emphasize that so much, that it's really observing, listening, not always talking, not rushing, which I feel it's a huge problem in the UN because there's such an overload of problems and lack of resources and time that we rush way too much, and nature doesn't rush. It has the time it takes, and it always grows. Like if you look at nature, it will always find a way to find life, and we can maybe just trust in this ability that's in all of us to find the right solutions. I have one question for all my guests as well that I would like to ask you. Imagine you are going to be the next UN Secretary General that's going to start the office on the 1st of January 2027, and you will have administrative oversight over the UN and all of its institutions and headquarters around the world, and its 130,000 staff. So there is a lot of potential to use this platform. And if you were this Secretary General, what would be your agenda to promote regeneration inside and outside the UN? Do you have maybe 3 or 4 action points for us for your first 100 days in the office?
Yeah, that's a very big question. I mean, but I can imagine, because I can sense how big is the UN and the huge potential it has, and I think it's extremely far from its potential to build, permanent peace and a regenerative future for all. Maybe what I would try to do is to implement this culture of deep listening. Maybe have the major responsibles go to communities that are place-based and practice deep listening with them, because listening is actually a skill that our ancestors used to have, but we lost, our generation lost it. We don't know how to use this skill again. I think leaders need to relearn how to listen. Another thing that maybe I didn't talk about much in this call, and I was planning to do it, is to restructure around the bioregions. I think it's extremely important. So when we listen to the earth, we realize that actually the earth is made of bioregions, and some of these bioregions are key. They are like vital organs for the earth, like the Amazon rainforest, the Himalayas mountain range, like the Mediterranean bioregion, the Congo watershed. So these are key bioregions for the health of the planet and of humanity. And I think the UN need to restructure around these bioregions and bring their voices and put. So these bioregions maybe would actually really unite nations, and also think of nations. Most of them are colonial nation states. They are drew by people like men on a desk, and they drew the lines. These are artificial lines. But if we look at the earth as it is, we can use these nation states as an existed infrastructure, but we need to bring voices of other nations, like the salmon nations, olive trees nations, I don't know, like the other more than human nations, like the oak trees nations, like Posidonia nation or coral nations. So we need these voices to have proper seats in UN General Assembly. And maybe a third thing would be to review the metrics and look at the health of ecosystems. Yeah, the rivers, the drinkable rivers, the breathable air, healthy oceans. So yeah, these need to be the metrics for the success of UN work. Yeah.
Brilliant, Elias. And you have my vote if you decide to become the candidate. I think what you have described is so needed. And the thing is, it's possible. Like we could do it if we all would see that potential, especially in restructuring around bioregions. You can still keep the nation states, but you can focus on that. I really hope the next Secretary General will listen to your points. What I see as a general question I have, in some ways we are already organizing around these bioregions also that you mentioned in the Congo Basin, and also in around Victoria Lake. There are structures in the UN that try to bring all of these nations closer together, talk to each other. What is often a problem in any kind of collaboration is that the human greed, or this notion that you get more benefits if you go by force, by overpowering, by extracting resources for your own sake. So it's not natural that humans would organize around this and let go of this notion they need more, more, more. So for me personally, one of the core issues we need to work on is the mindset shift, the inner development of why do we need all this more, more, more all the time before any of these structures can work. What are your thoughts on this? And this is a heavy question, but it's something that is on my mind, especially around bioregions and regeneration in general.
Yeah, it's an important question. For me, there is a lot of work to do on decolonizing the mind, the way to look at the world, and the way to our relationship with the earth and with others, and what is possible from there. And the roots of colonization are deep into us, but there are even deeper roots than the colonizing mind roots is the bioregional mind. I think it's even deeper. And we need to remember that bioregional mind, because humans exist on Earth maybe since 300,000 years or more. And for most, like 99% of its existence on Earth, it functioned through the bioregional mind. And it got colonized maybe in the last few thousand years. And so the roots of bioregional mind are even deeper, and we need to remember that mind, that way of looking at the earth and looking at the land and our relationship with the land. For example, not a land cannot be owned. We can belong to a land, but we cannot own a land. That's the bioregional mind. And the colonized mind tell us that, yeah, you can own a land and you can extract whatever you want from the land. So we need decolonize our mind and then remember the bioregional mind that would allow us to live in abundance and live in harmony with nature.
So many pearls of wisdom, and it reminds me of what you said earlier. We need to learn to listen again and tell stories around circles, campfires, maybe, and that will help us remember the roots and our connection to nature and to the ecosystem and the ways that life actually works, and maybe stop all the distraction with social media and really focus back on that would also be my hope for the future. We're already running out of time, and I want to be mindful also of your time. So maybe one last question for you is, what would be one daily regenerative practice that you are practicing that might be useful for our listeners to also adjust their routine to?
A daily practice would be practice gratitude to everything I receive from earth. When I drink water, when I use my body, when I everything, when I go to look at the trees, eat. So yeah, practice gratitude and practice grounding too. Physical work, I think, is grounding practice, and be grateful for everything we receive.
Get away from just your head-based thinking and data and facts and get more into the heart and into your gratitude. That's beautiful. Elyes, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more about your wisdom and philosophy and maybe work with you?
Thank you. For now, I'm mostly present on LinkedIn. I have my personal page, Elyes Mkacher, and I will be happy to connect with anyone who share the vision of regenerating the earth.
Beautiful, and good to see that there is such a big champion of it in Tunisia and also active globally on Design School for Regenerating Earth. Thank you, Elyes, for your time and sharing your beautiful wisdom with us. And I wish you all the best for your mission.
Yeah, thank you so much, Silke, and thank you for inviting me. And I look forward to follow your podcast. I think it's extremely relevant, so I'm excited about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.